Hi, my name is David Hirsch, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the first in the series of bi-weekly Special Fathers Network Dad Zoom calls, hosted by the 21st Century Dads Foundation, a 501c3 not-for-profit organization whose mission is improving the lives of children by raising awareness and resources for greater father involvement and inspiring dads to be present physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. Before we get started, I want to offer my sincere thanks to the 21st Century Dads Foundation Volunteer Board, today's presenters, and especially my friend Tom Couch for serving as today's Zoom host. Incidentally, Tom is also the editor and producer of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. As a side note, May was a milestone month for the podcast. We produced our 100th episode, and it was the first month that we had more than 1,000 downloads or listens. So kudos to Tom for all the good work that he does. Here's a quick run of show for today's Dad Zoom call. I'm going to ask each of our presenters to make some personal, brief self-introductions. Each of them will then take a few minutes to talk about the Dads Meetup groups that they each lead. We'll follow up their presentations by some Q&A, and if time allows, what we'll do is we'll go into breakout groups, but that's not a for sure thing. So, the topic for tonight is Dads Meetup groups. And one of the most effective ways that dads can stay on top of their game is to be in a relationship with other dads. As part of the registration, we asked a series of questions. Here's a brief overview of those questions. Are you currently involved in a dad's meetup group? 42% said yes. The other 58% said no. Question number 2 was, are you interested in starting a dad's meetup group? 3 indicated, those that weren't already involved, 3 indicated that they were, and 2 had like question marks or maybe. And then the last question was, would you like to attend a dad's meetup group? Not surprisingly, a majority said yes. I guess that's why we're on the call tonight. So let's get started. We'll go in alphabetical order. And Tom Delaney, you'll be the first one up with our personal self-introductions.
Yeah, Tom Delaney. I live in Downers Grove, Illinois. I have 2 boys, Charlie and Jack. Charlie is 14 years old. Jack is 12 years old. Jack is my son that has Down syndrome. We live here on Gilbert Avenue in Downers Grove with my wife, Peggy. And for a living, I am an insurance executive specializing in selling various to financial institutions.
Thanks, Tom. John Fellogeller, over to you.
Thanks. I'm only a couple minutes late, but it seems like my timing was impeccable. Yeah, John Fellogeller. I live in Highwood, Illinois. I have one son, Christopher, who's autistic nonverbal, recently divorced, and so he lives. He attends school in Northbrook, where my ex still lives, and he attends the public schools there, as well as a bunch of therapy on the side. I currently work for Totaling to Community, which is a nonprofit organization based in Northbrook serving special needs adults. I'm a program manager for them, and we do customized job placement as well as social programming and outing. So,
excellent. Glad you could join us, John. Matt, over to you.
Hey guys, I'm Matt LaTourette. I live in Aurora, Illinois, and I have 3 kids, 2 with special needs and a daughter who's typical. My oldest son, Aiden, has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. He's nonverbal. He can walk and get around, but we have to do a lot for him. You know, he's still in a diaper, and we have to feed him, cut his food and do all that stuff. So he requires a lot of attention, but he's very happy. He's a great kid. And then my other son, Nolan, has autism, and he has epilepsy. And he's cognitively delayed. He just graduated 8th grade, and he has a twin sister who is typical. And and they both graduate, so they'll all be in high school this year, all 3.
Wow.
Or in fall.
Excellent. Well, Matt, thanks for joining us. So what I think is most remarkable before we dive into the details is that each of the 3 dads who are presenters tonight all have families, all have children with special needs, and they're finding it within them to not just sort of trying to balance work and family themselves, but they're making it possible for other dads to engage. And that's what I think is most remarkable. So my hat's off to you 3 guys. Thank you for taking the time tonight. And we're gonna go in alphabetical order again. So Tom Delaney, you're going to lead off, and you're going to be talking about DADS, which is an acronym for Dads Appreciating Down Syndrome. Back to you, Tom.
Jack was about 3 years old. I found myself in a situation where I was feeling because my wife and I seem to be dealing with the diagnosis quite a bit differently. She is very organized and a planner and needed to figure out everything she possibly could about Down syndrome. And I'm more of a cross the bridges as we come to them kind of guy, and enjoying my son and his progress, and not particularly seeing eye to eye with my spouse at the time. And then I was also finding that when I was out for drinks with friends or socializing with college buddies, and they would talk about how their kid, was struggling in school and not getting straight A's, or they hadn't made the soccer travel team. And I just was kind of feeling this void where I wasn't relating well either to my wife or to my buddies, and was feeling a little bit lost. So I went to the National Association for Down Syndrome conference in 2010, and there was a group that presented called Dads Appreciating Down Syndrome, and it was the guys from the national chapter out of Indianapolis, and they presented about this group, and it was for guys only. There were no women in the session. And they presented about the goals and the mission of the group. And the purpose was to recruit and try to form a chapter in Chicagoland. Because they have chapters all over the US, and they didn't have one in Chicago. So they turned up at NADS to do this presentation. And there was a group, I don't know, maybe there's 15 guys in the room or so. And probably the last half of the session went from being a presentation and instructional to guys kind of pulling their chairs around and talking about what it's like to be a dad of a child with special needs. And it really, really resonated with me, and it felt really, really good. And at the end of the presentation, I kind of walked up to the front of the room to the presenters, and I said, "Hey, we should do this in Chicago. How do we do this? How do we get one started?" And the guy hands me a pad of paper and a pen, and he goes, "Start writing down names and email addresses." And I said, "Well, like, how is it, why is it me?" Right? And he says, "Every time we do one of these, the guy who runs the thing and starts it up self-selects." And so I started taking names and email addresses down. It's been 10 years. I can't believe it. But over the last 10 years, we've got about 140 guys on the distribution list. I would say that we have 25 or so that are, somewhat regular participants in our monthly meetings. And really what we do is we get together the last Sunday of every month from about 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And we usually pick a place where we can socialize and have a few beers. And kind of the journey of our group was, we didn't really know what we wanted to be in 2011 and 2012. And there was a lot of conversation about, well, what is our dad's group going to do? Do we want to raise money? Do we want to, be politically active? What is our mission? And Chicago's got Gigi's Playhouse, it's got NADS, it's got Ups for Downs. There are a lot of support groups already in the Down syndrome community. We didn't feel like it necessarily needed another group. But so we decided that what we would do is we would just be the muscle for some of those groups. So if they were doing a 5K, if they were having a conference and they needed help setting up, tearing down, just how can this group of dads chip in and be supportive of groups that already existed. And so we did that pretty well for, I'd say, 3 or 4 years. And just over time, we just kind of started to taper away from that sort of involvement. At our meetings, we have had a handful of politicians come. I did get my U.S. congressman to come and speak to us, which was really nice. David came and spoke to us, even though he's not a politician. We've had our state rep come and talk to us as well. But by and large, what we ended up being is a social group. So we're mostly a social group that just gets together. Guys get out of the house. They get together and have a few beers and talk about what it's like to be a dad. So that's where we are right now. We haven't got together, but February was the only time we got together this year because we're in COVID right now. So it's a little unfortunate. I haven't tried a Zoom meeting yet, but our group, like I said, it's largely a social group right now, but it's a great group of guys who come to brag and to share and just to kind of let their hair down a little bit and have a few laughs. So that's what we're up to right now. So
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. John Fellogeller, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, David. So I'll begin by saying that for me, kind of the genesis of the group started a long time ago, right about the time when I first got my son's diagnosis. So we're going back over 10 years now. The one thing that I think you learn really quickly is that, especially when you get a diagnosis and that's all fresh and new in your mind, is you start reaching out for support. When it was new to us, we were neophytes, and we really didn't even know where to look for support, type of a thing. My wife was very good about reaching out and connecting with women, but for the guys I found, there wasn't a lot. And actually, it's intriguing because one of the first things I saw related to support for dads was actually an article I saw in the Special Parent magazine, which is an arm of Chicago Parent magazine, and it was actually a focus on Matt's group, Meets in Naperville. So when I read that, I said, wow, this looks great. Except at the time, we weren't even living in Northbrook. We were living up in Grays Lake, so we were in northern Lake County. And I said, well, looks good, but not convenient. I can't make it out there. But the seed stuck in my head. And so when we moved to Northbrook in 2012, I did start the first incarnation of the dad's group currently that I have. This one, though, it wasn't a general kind of open invitation kind of a thing. I really only specifically and intentionally invited dads from my son's school, from his classroom, from the local district, neighborhood, etc. And I would tell you that the first time we met, and we meet at the Landmark Inn, by the way, in downtown Northbrook, it's a classic building down there. We had about 10 guys, and I said, well, this is a great start. And then the next couple times we had 2. And then I just stopped doing them because, and this is going back maybe 5 or 6 years now, because what you find is you can probably get most guys out one time, but it's not just a carrot, it's a bag of carrots. It's a truckload of carrots. It's what can you keep kind of feeding guys that'll make them keep coming. So back in about 2017, my ex-wife actually introduced me to the Facebook group that Matt had started as an outreach of his group. So dads of special needs kids on Facebook. And then I connected with a guy in there named Craig Davishoff, who Matt also knows. And Craig put it out there, lives in Deerfield, and said, hey, listen, I'd like to start a version of this up here for us northern folk. Who's up? And of course, I raised my hand, being me. So the two of us connected, and we started it up again at the Landmark Inn monthly. It did initially, our focus was to be kind of a social group and just kind of see where things go. I think we found after doing it for about a year that, again, finding those repeated carrots for guys, one of the things that I think really helps guys, especially if they're newer to a group, to kind of put their guard down is if you have someone presenting, right? Because anybody will come and see somebody speak, if the topic is relevant and something they want to know about, because then it minimizes the anxiety of, do I need to talk? How much do I need to share? Whatever, I'll just come see this person speak, maybe say hi a little bit, and then I can leave. So we started that a couple of years ago. And I would tell you that that's been definitely more successful. We've kind of run the gamut in terms of the type of speakers we've had. David has certainly been out there. We've had special needs attorneys come out. We've had counselors come out, special needs advocates that work in schools, just the whole range. We've had women speakers as well. We've actually had one woman guest come, a mom who actually came to a meeting one time, not realizing it was a dad's group. No problem. Just like when you come to the Special Fathers Network online, you're more than welcome. No problem. So, so we've had some of those experiences. And I would tell you that, do we have a consistently large group? No. But I know that we have guys that are kind of a core, that we've developed over the months and years. And more than likely you see those core guys, or you see them relatively frequently. And I think the one thing you get out of it too, and I think Tom kind of touched on it, is that, we've developed friendships outside. Craig and I, who I started with, we've developed a friendship outside of all of this. I have friendships with some of the other guys as well. Matt, and my group, we've connected. Craig and I have been down to his group. We're still trying to get him up to ours, someday. But we've, coordinated on some social things and whatnot. And, again, I think the word that I'll use that I like to use in a lot of these situations is synergy, right? It's about building the relationships and then dynamically evolving them. So it's not just, well, I've got a group and Tom's got a group and Matt's got a group. We've all got a group. Now, how do we get our groups to group together possibly, or work together or network? because you may want to go down to Naperville someday if Matt's got something really cool going on, or to Tom's, or, you know, something might not be close for you. So just come to ours when it's convenient. And if you're inspired by something else going on, great, you know, but, you know, the high tide raises all ships, you know, and I think that's the attitude that I have about it. You know, and I think all of us guys try to share is we got to get men out. We have to get men involved. We have to get men supported, you know, whatever way that is, you know. I know for myself, I'm willing to look at all of it.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Matt, back to you.
Hey guys, so I started my group. I'm from Chicago originally, grew up in the city. We moved out of state and lived in Nebraska for a while, in Missouri, and that's when we had our son Aiden. And so we were really kind of on our own. We didn't have any friends or anyone out there. It kind of made it easy though, because then, I mean, easy as far as caring for him, and you know, I didn't feel like a lot of family didn't understand, I guess, to a degree. I guess we needed, you know, the help would have been nice, but I didn't feel that anxiety of like social obligations and comparing my kids to other kids, at least early on, to my friends' kids. But we moved back probably about 11 years ago now, and I've been very involved with everything with my son. And so in reading all the books were always about the mom, and everything else was about the mom. I'm like, well, where are these dads? I'm like, I'm the dad. I'm reading the book. My wife wasn't reading the book. I was reading the book. I'm like, where are these guys? So we moved to Naperville. We live in Aurora, actually, but we're in Naperville School District. We have a very active special needs PTA, and I was part of that. And I said, you know, it's kind of an opportunity I came up with an idea of let's have a dad's group. And I was thinking, if we were to have a dad's group, if I were to go to a meeting, where would I want to go? And I figured, you know, going to a pub is a nice idea. You can have a beer with everyone, and you can, you know, it's a night out. I think that's part of the appeal. So it started I started it with the special needs PTA, which was actually kind of nice because they helped get the word out. So I kind of had, you know, that helped. But I also went to the media. I went to the local paper in Naperville, in the town, and I told them about our group, and they did an interview, and we had a ton of guys for the first one. So there's definitely some work you need to do when you start it to help get the word out. And it kind of, it can get tiring. I mean, I need to do another round of trying to get the word out again, because, you know, some guys, you know, kind of age out, and there's some younger dads in the group, or who could benefit. So that's kind of how I started the group. We were meeting once a month, you know, we had speakers, and the goal was to provide value, you know, and not meet just to meet, but it turned into the same type of thing. We became friends. And I think that's what it was. It was kind of, you looked forward to it. You look forward to seeing everyone catching up. And we've had a lot of speakers. We've had Brian Rubin and his son, Benji, a few times. They've been great. And we've had the same thing as, like Tom mentioned, politicians, state representatives. We had anybody, you know, had value, you know, was interested in. But what's interesting is that dads want to go. So other dads definitely are interested in this type of thing, but not everyone's going to take the lead on it. And even in my group, everyone, it's great, but it's a lot of people look to me to schedule the meetings and do all that. And we are not like super organized, where we have a president, a vice president. It's kind of laid back. And actually a lot of the dads prefer that. They don't, you know, we were talking about, do we want to get involved in different activities and become a 403C? But it was, no one has time. That's the problem. And now, you know, they didn't want to get involved in that aspect. They like the laid back aspect of it, of, hey, let's meet once a month. They get a hall pass, which is great. Their wives are literally pushing them out the door, saying, go, get out, you know, go out for a drink, go meet other dads. And it's kind of funny. The very first night we met, one of the dads, we were kind of done about 9:30. We meet at 7. We're done about 9:30. And he's like, all right, nobody go home till midnight. Let's set the precedent that, you know, we're out, we're not coming home till late. And this is what the dad's meeting is going to be like. We're, you know, late night out. So it's kind of funny, but we have a great group of dads. And I think that it's amazing. You know, I think they're, the work that they do and the involvement, it's pretty amazing. And there's a lot more out there.
Well, a great presentation. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tom, and John as well. I've spoken at each of your groups, so I have a flavor for the makeup of the groups, and it's a pretty diverse group of guys, especially by age. Some of them are more seasoned. They've got, you know, young adults as their sons or daughters with special needs, and others are, you know, closer to the beginning of their journey, which is, I think, where the benefit really is, to get plugged in sooner than later, right? So that you can start learning from the get-go and not make some of the same rookie mistakes that we all make, right, as young dads. It's not a function of having a child with special needs. It's just being a rookie dad. So my hat's off to you guys. So I'm going to go to the question and answer part, and I'm going to start it off with a few questions, and then I think Tom Couch, because the group is relatively small, we'll just stay in one group, and we'll just let everybody on the call ask questions. I'm hoping it's orderly, or we can do this in an orderly fashion. But just to get the ball rolling, and it's an open question to all three of the presenters. What's been your most gratifying experience so far?
I'd say for me, I would say the friendships, and then seeing the passion and the commitment of these other dads in the group. I mean, I kind of think that, I kind of see them as heroes, and they're great role models. So I think they're great people. I think they're great. They're good friends, and they're just great guys. So I think that is good. I think as you get older, it's harder to make friends for most people, adults. You're so busy with life, and there's not many situations where you get kind of on that friendship level where you can open up about things like our special needs kids and things that we do, and the challenges they have. They don't talk to some people don't talk to anybody else about this stuff because their family doesn't understand, and it's just it's like they get with us and they just their guard is down, and it's been very cool to have that type of thing because I think it's kind of unique. So
excellent, thanks, Matt. Tom or John, did you want to add anything?
So I can just thanks. I can just piggyback on that. Really, for me, it's a lot of the same. It's the vulnerability that the guys have shown, really, just the amount of sharing they're doing. And I think the one thing that you learn pretty quickly is that we're all struggling on some level with this. And one of the things that I know men really struggle with, especially in terms of having a new diagnosis and being newer on the journey, is to what degree do you really want to share with people? How much do you want, especially strangers, to know what's going on with your kid and where are you at and the things that you're dealing with? And maybe over time that softens, but it's still a very personal thing. It's something that you're always going to be guarded about to some degree. And I know, especially for myself, not just having a special needs child, but now also having gone through a divorce, and also now knowing other men who have also gone through exactly what I've gone through, it humanizes your situation a lot more, so that you realize, look, I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my child. Look at all of these other men who are, working and dealing with this on some level. And some of your stories are similar, some very different, but you can all find a commonality. You can all find that common ground where you can at least have that discussion with, and pretty heartfelt. And again, I think in groups like this, you see guys really, really bearing their souls, as much as you possibly could expect, I think. So it's very uplifting, in that sense. So.
John, Tom?
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, it's some of the most, I can remember one of the most rewarding dads meetings that we ever had for me was right around the time, and it's, when you're leading a group, it's can get tiring, you kind of want to, some days you just don't want to do it anymore. You don't want to be the leader. You don't want to organize everything. And I was kind of in one of those ruts, and we only had 3 guys total shows, me and 2 other guys show up for a dad's meeting. And by the end of it, not me, but both of the other gentlemen before the end of the meeting had shed a tear.
Wow.
talking about their kids. And it's one of those things where you get back in your car and you're reminded why you do it, because these 2 guys obviously needed to come and talk and get something off their chest, and they found somebody to talk to who would listen, who could appreciate what they were going through. And that's when you're reminded of why you're doing it. And it was a really special thing. And so the next month it was a little bit easier to send the emails out and set the meeting up. But that was really rewarding things can come out of leading one of these groups.
Excellent. So what advice would you give someone who wants to join a group, or maybe even consider starting a group? Any pearls of wisdom? Do this, don't do that.
I would say start some type of group like social media, Facebook, that type of thing. I would reach out. Some of the schools can be kind of, they don't always want to share. Sometimes they're kind of weird about sharing information and even having parents talk to each other, which is kind of odd, but sometimes you can't, like, I don't even know who some of my son's other classmates are, like their parents, like.
It's a privacy issue. Isn't that what you're referring to, Matt?
Yeah, it's a privacy issue, but
Yeah.
there's rumors that sometimes that's intentional, but that's debatable. But I think if you can go to school and you can get, let them know, make a flyer. I mean, it's kind of like a PR campaign. If you really want to promote it, and that's kind of what I did when I started, and I mentioned it, I need to go back and do another round. Print out little flyers, if you have a website, that's great. We don't, we just have a Facebook group, talk to the school, drop it off at physical therapy places. I had, my stuff everywhere. I called the newspaper and I called the Chicago Parent Magazine, which John saw it in. And it wasn't about me. I don't care about me. I don't want it to be about me. It's about the word of mouth of the group and getting more and helping people, because it provides value. And it helps people, kind of like what Tom was just saying, and it's real. So I think it's important to think we're tasked with it now to get the word out.
Excellent, John or Tom?
Yeah, I had a little bit of luck locking on to an association as well. NADS was really supportive of what we were up to, so we ended up growing our group quite a bit through NADS inquiries, National Association for Down Syndrome. So. Yeah, they have a new parent program, and if there's a kind of a new dad that they learn of, I would get an email saying, hey, here's a new dad. You might want to send him a note and welcome him to the club and invite him to the group. So if you can lock onto an association, that can be helpful. I think another piece of advice I would give, just along the lines of sometimes getting worn out being the leader, is you should make sure that you have a second and a third in command, because you need to be able to put your hand up and say, you know what, I'm running out of gas. And somebody else needs to kind of be the ramrod for 6 months or something like that. And know that somebody's going to kind of pick up the torch and carry it. And I think that's a place that we've kind of fell down. We have a great group of guys, but I kind of feel like if I didn't make it happen, it wouldn't happen. And I think that over time, that can be a heavy load to carry.
I just want to be clear. Tom's making reference to having a dad backup in the dad's backup group, not with his wife. I just had to say that. Thanks.
Yes.
So, John, up to you.
I would also really emphasize the usage of social media. So I know in the case of our group, that really kind of made the difference in terms of, we have a Facebook group specifically for it, similar to Matt's. Again, going with this whole synergy idea, I'll post those meetups in Matt's group just in case somebody's interested, that type of thing, vice versa. And also in a lot of these other special needs-based Facebook groups, usually where a lot of the moms are involved, but they spread it out and they tell the husbands, So I know we've had a lot of guys, even if they were just one-timers, come out because the wife had mentioned it, or they saw something that somebody had shared, kind of a thing. And the other nice thing too is that in some of these larger special needs-based Facebook groups, you also have a lot of folks who are therapists or own clinics, that type of thing. So there's a clinic in Northbrook that my son had attended previously, so we, the owner knew me and we're familiar with our family, so she always shares it out, type of a thing. So the nice thing about the social media is that if you get the ball rolling and not just have a group, but then you're able to promote it in 5, 6, 10 different spots, then, you get enough of the work to come out, because again, you never quite know exactly how people are finding these things. But the fact is that I think what you really learn is that it's not just about getting in front of the guys, you have to get it in front of the women. And since the women and the moms tend to be a little bit more active in some of these groups as well, then that also helps to get the word out to the guys. And I've had more than one guy come out and say, in fact, specifically, there was one guy who I know said, I'm here because, my kid's mom said, you'd be in this place at this time till this time, go. Well, hey, that's all it took. So.
Excellent. One more question, and I'll open it up to the group. What's the best advice each of you has, with all the experience you have under your belt, since your kids are not super young anymore, to the new dads, the dads that have the 0 to 3 early intervention type of age kids, or maybe they're at the very beginning of their IEP journey. What's your best pearl wisdom or two?
Wow.
I would say for me is that it's easier said than done, but don't waste a lot of energy thinking about worst case scenarios of what can happen. I mean, my son, I'm pretty laid back and lighthearted. And the geneticist came out when my son was born, and he listed probably about 30 things, literally like 30 things that my son will see in his life, like severe mental retardation. He might not walk, he won't talk, you'll be feeding him. But the very last thing was that he has a third nipple. And my wife and I just started laughing. We were crying, but as he was saying at the time, we started laughing. And it was just, we found comedy in that situation. I mean, I've had many restless nights, like thinking about all these worst case scenarios. And then you realize a lot of them don't come true as you're kind of going through this. And I wasted a lot of energy and stress, and it wears on you. And again, this is easier said than done. It's not, I mean, we still do it. I think we all do it. It's human nature to do that. I mean, how many of us wake up at 3 a.m. and worry about, whatever it is we're worrying about? But why can't we spend our energy thinking about something positive? It's much harder to do. But I would say that don't think of all the worst case scenarios. Plan, and then, but you have to plan for the future. But at some point, you have to let it go and just do the best you can.
Good advice. Thanks, Matt. Tom or John?
For me, I think it's just follow your heart, And I think your heart's going to tell you when it's time to engage, when it's time to step back, and I think that's been a big one for me, is just kind of listening to my inner voice, and when it was time to really dive into a particular issue, and when it was time to kind of back off and maybe let my wife run with it, and it's worked so far. I suppose you can have an inner voice that isn't effective, but thank God, touch wood, mine has been. But I think just kind of follow your heart, and you'll know what's right, I think. And life comes at you from a lot of different directions, from the physical to the emotional to whatever it is, and you just have to roll with the punches, but kind of listen to what your inner voice has to say to you.
Good one. John, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I would say have compassion for yourself and start forgiving yourself now for anything that you think you may have done or will do in the future. I think when you first get a diagnosis, and I know for my ex and I, that really was the conversation. What did we do wrong? And what you have to remember is, in some cases, maybe you can pinpoint it, but in the majority of them, you can't, or you're grasping at straws because there could be a million possibilities. The bottom line is that you have to forgive yourself for anything that you think you may have done. You have to admit that you are a good person, good parent, and like all parents, you will learn, and you will make more mistakes, whether you have a typical or an atypical child. And really good advice that we got early on from a close family friend was, when our son was very small, start forgiving yourself now for the things you'll do later. Because, God knows we tried a lot of things that we thought maybe would help our child, support him, maybe even fix him. Some things work, some things don't. And it doesn't mean that you stop trying or you don't stop loving your child, but have compassion for yourself, because it's a long journey, it's a tough journey, and you can very easily beat yourself up for all the things you think you didn't do or could do better. And at the end of the day, that's not going to matter as much as you just being as present as you can be, loving your child, giving them as much as you can, and doing the best you can, remembering you're human too. You will make mistakes, but if you keep loving your child, at the end, that's all that matters.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. So, Tom Couch, I'd like to open it up, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to present them. And as well, I know that there's some more experienced dads on the call that have some groups of their own that they've been working with. Some are more specific, like these three, with dad meetup groups for those raising children with special needs, and others are more men's groups. And I think we can all learn from one another. So, Scott Sauer, coming live from Atlanta.
I'm sorry I missed almost half the thing. I had a technical difficulty. I couldn't hear anything.
You're one of the older guys, so we'll give you a pass.
And it all just crumbled in on me, and I had to reboot. So I don't really have a question. Well, since I missed it, I know this is about setting up group dad meetups and stuff, right?
Mhm.
And people that do it. I mean, I chair the special needs ministry at our church, where I come in contact with a lot of people that just, people do want to talk. I think the mothers more than the fathers. I'm part of that Manage You, where anywhere from 110 to 125 men meet Friday mornings for spring and fall. Oh God, I think it's a long time, but we meet at 5:45 in the morning on Fridays, and we see a video from Paris Diem. It's that Manage You. It's about making you a better father, a better husband, and a better Christian. And it's been really good. We've done it for 5 years. And we started out with 20 guys, 30, and now it's 100 and something. We don't get to meet now because of the virus, which I think is throwing us all back to the 1950s, because we don't go anywhere. We cook for ourselves. We plant gardens, and we hang out at home a lot, and we're with our families more. But I don't know how this is going to work out. I love that we're doing this with the Zoom meetings. I think if it catches on, it's a really good way to meet. We're doing it at work, of course, but just to sit and talk like this is very comfortable. It's not intimidating. I can turn you off if I want to. No, but I just, I do the ministry. I do the Manage You. I coach. I don't know if any of y'all coach special baseball, or I do baseball. But I find that my range of friends, I don't know how it is with you, but younger, I used to have all kinds of friends that didn't have kids that were special needs, and very few did. And then as we got older, all my friends are people with special needs kids. I don't know if you find that to be true in your own lives, but it's kind of hard to, when you say you want to have a group or a dad meetup or something like that, it's it's a one-on-one, or a couple of us at baseball, or at church. It's never really organized. But when we do talk, I heard someone earlier, I think it was Tom, said he got a couple of guys started crying a little bit. Yeah, I've been there a lot. And dads especially, they get choked up. They really do. Because they care deeply about their child, because as men, our job is to fix everything. And when you can't, for young fathers especially, it's a hard hurdle to jump. When you hit that wall of reality, and it is what it is, you can't dwell on it a lot. You got to knock that wall down and crawl over it and go with it. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I want to head one of these up here in Atlanta, or just continue on what I'm doing and join up with some of y'all's groups.
Thanks for sharing, Scott. Any other questions that anybody has, either for our presenters or a comment that they want to share with the overall group?
Hi, I'm Nathan. I've got a 2-year-old, so I'm in the last question group. I've got a 2-year-old with Angelman syndrome, super rare neurogenetic disorder, and all kinds of blessings and challenges that go along with that. We are in a really unique situation in that we are looking to start an outreach or some sort of care for special needs families in this town, which is Tokyo, Japan. We've lived there for the last 4 years, and as soon as Japan will let us back in the country, we hope to go back. And so hearing your stories of where you connect with guys, of how to invite them in, and what benefit you can sell. Because the truth is, I'm one of them. I'm brand new to this whole journey. I've had a diagnosis for about a year and a half, less than a year and a half now. And so with all of that, I don't know what I need. Presently, the idea of getting together with a bunch of guys and sharing a beer sounds really pleasant. Not being stuck in my house with my beloved family. And I do mean that beloved, really beloved, not that. But question for you guys is, if you were to be back in my shoes, very beginning of this, with all of your wisdom and all of your experience, and I think probably all of you have more than I do at this point, what would be the thing that you could say really changed your outlook on this new reality of diagnosis?
We'll open it up to anybody who wants to answer.
Thank you.
I think we've got a lot of wisdom in the audience here. There's a couple people that have gray hair, or even actually more hair than I do.
Just don't deny it. I mean, first is denial, then there's fix it, then there's, what can I do? And love your child a lot, because there's going to be a lot of changes. But don't be afraid. Is it a girl or boy?
It's a little girl.
Little
and I also
girl.
have I've got a 4-year-old neurotypical.
Right. I've got a 32-year-old daughter with autism and mildly mentally delayed, and she's mentally delayed. But you just, they're perfectly who they are. Do you know what I mean by that? That's who they are. Like a doctor told me when I was all freaking out, he said, she's going to grow up to be whatever she's going to be. Be there to nurture, to help her, and love her, and be there for her. Be consistent. But don't look at her as some strange person, because, people do that. Like my wife says, there's some lady asked her, what's wrong with Gloria? And she said, nothing. Why? I mean, it's like, she's perfectly who she is, Gloria. So, I mean, just go with it, and do the best you can. But you're good. You'll be all right.
Good advice. Anybody else want to share?
I think acceptance was something that really, really helped me. And I was very, very fortunate that it came not fully, but very, very early on when Jack was born, and he was laying there under the heat lamp, 5 minutes old. And the neonatologist came over and pretty much said, it appears that your son has Down syndrome. And I said, well, how do you know? And he gave me a whole list of physical things about Jack that were, indicating that he probably had it. And I said, well, when will you know for sure? And he said, we'll do a genetics test and we'll know. And I said, what do you think the odds are? And he said, about 90%. So he pretty much said, so I knew Jack for all of like 2 seconds, before I knew that he had Down syndrome. And I can remember him laying there naked, and I just was completely drawn to him and just went over and started talking to him. And he was my son. He's no better. He's no worse. We're all different, right? All 9 guys on this call are different.
I'll jump in and just say that what you want to understand is just how much of a gift, and I know this is very hard to hear and accept. It certainly was for me. I think it is for all special needs parents, because you hear a lot of this rhetoric about, oh, well, your child is a gift and only you could handle this, and, all of these platitudes. And, when you first get a diagnosis, you're like, look, that's all great. How do I fix that? Where's the cure? Where's the this, And what I will say is, I would never give anybody just throwaway surface advice, because I wouldn't waste anybody's time with that. But what I will say in terms of my child being a gift in my life, first of all, I see just how much joy he brings all the people that work with him. He's just a happy kid. And I think that you have to remember that our kids are kids like any other kids. And they're going to, ideally have a lot of the same happiness and joy that typical kids will. And so you want to plug into that, and see what are the things that make him happy. I'm glad that I know the things at least that I can share with my kid that make him happy, the things that I also like to do or, enjoy doing with him. I see the way a lot of his teachers and therapists over the years have reacted to him and said, wow, he's just the best kid. He's just sweet and happy and always has a smile. And quite honestly, going back to the point about, most of your friends being special needs parents also, or dads, I will say this, I have been lucky in that I've gotten to meet so many wonderful people, men, husbands, dads, moms, wives, etc. I never would have met, if I wasn't on this journey. There's so many things that I've been lucky to be involved in and a part of. Never would have even crossed my mind if I wasn't on this road. And the ways that I've been able to give back. I mean, 10 years ago, I might have been like, yeah, whatever, see you later, but now I get the big picture. And so find those joys. They might be small things. It might not be anything life changing, but you know what? It'll make all the difference in terms of your relationship with your child and also your relationship with yourself, right? It'll bring you peace and comfort to know, listen, I'm going to find the joy and happiness in my relationship with my child. And you know what? It's still going to be for a lifetime, and it'll be the absolute best that it can be. And, buy into that and embrace it.
Good advice.
Thanks,
Anybody
John.
else?
Yeah, can I add something real quick just on to what Tom said about acceptance? I think I did a good job of accepting it early on, but I think I didn't accept the bad aspect. I accepted the the good. Okay, well he has this, and this is what I'm going to do with it. Like we are fixers. But I think it's okay to let yourself grieve, and this sucks. It sucks worse for your daughter or your son, and it sucks. It just does. It's not good. But I think the caveat is, what do you do with that? Let yourself grieve, but then, okay, now what? What are you going to do with that? I mean, you can be bitter until the day you die, and that's not productive. What do you do with this? It's almost like it's almost freeing. It kind of lets you kind of get out of your system, and then you find a way to move on. And kind of what I said earlier too, don't think of all the different horror stories of what can happen. You have to plan and prepare. And that's your daughter. This is your family. That's who it is. That's all I wanted to really add about that.
Yeah, I think it's important that what Matt said about sense of humor and laughing while getting a diagnosis. Keep your sense of humor. There's a lot of funny stuff and a lot of fun stuff that's going to come out of that.
Yeah.
You're in Japan, Nathan, you said?
Right now we're stuck in Knoxville, Tennessee, but
Okay.
our home is in Tokyo.
Was your daughter born in Japan?
Yeah, she was. Both of our girls were.
Okay. Yeah, we were living in France for 20 years, and we ended up moving back to the States because of our son needing special care for autism. So that ended up redirecting our whole lives, basically. We have 4 kids, so our 6 people were involved with his changes and all that. And it's changed my career, what I do, all that. And it revolves around special needs, all I do, basically. So my son John's autism basically has directed my life into developing special needs ministry in different countries and in the New York area. So I think this is a faith-based group. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure. But if you believe in God, then definitely God has intervened in our lives through bringing a son with autism into our family. And I remember last year thinking that everyone I interacted with that weekend, I didn't know 4 years ago because of our son. I had this whole new network of people, friends and all that. And so he really has changed our world, but it's really enriched our world as well. I have a friend in Minnesota who has a daughter with Angelman, so she's written a book too, so if I can find it, I can pass it.
We've connected. We've connected already. Yeah, she's talked with my wife. Actually, that's how I found out about this group.
Okay.
She shared about the Special Fathers Network, and so I was on the conference last month.
Yeah, I was too. Okay, that was my first time. Okay, so you know her already. Okay, good. So I have a question.
Yes.
As well. I know online a lot of stuff's been developing, and in our church and other stuff, and I'm hearing other places, online groups are growing fast. I'm wondering for men's groups, since it sounds like they were all physical groups until COVID hit, and now with, I know Illinois is kind of slow in getting out of quarantining, all that. New Jersey is as well, where I'm from. But I'm wondering if there's groups that will just be online groups, or if there's any like that, or if groups that are physical groups might become online groups or things like that, or is it too new to know because no one's done online groups, unless they were really proactive before, how that might work. I've seen advantages of not having to travel, but it sounds like the fellowship is a good thing from the 3 guys that shared tonight getting together. So, that's a good thing. But so I'm just wondering how that might work going online versus physical groups meeting and things like that. So it might not be possible to answer at this point just because it hasn't really been tested long enough, but I'm hearing people open up and sometimes online more than physically when it's a physical group, if it's a support group in particular. So, I don't know. It's more of a comment maybe than a question because that might not be able to be answered at this
Well,
point.
we have a Facebook group. It's a closed, private dads Facebook group. There's about 220 dads in the group, and I did that in conjunction mainly because to get the word out about our meetings. It wasn't a great way to communicate, but it was either that or email, and it was just easier. It was easier for me to do it that way. It's grown though, and I've actually become friends with dads. We have a guy in Europe. He lives in London, and I'm friends with him, and with a guy in Kentucky. I mean, there's people from all over the country, and it's growing. So I think it's definitely doable, and we have very good conversations. And sometimes I lead it. I don't post stuff just to post. Sometimes it's 2 weeks that I don't post anything, but then the group is a little quiet. All of a sudden someone posts something and there's a ton of conversation. So it's kind of, it's very like kind of natural, organic, so I think there's opportunity for online.
Excellent. Well, we've just got a few minutes left, so I'm going to give a few of the guys who might not have had a chance to engage. Peter, Eric, Wayne, did you want to pose a question or share a thought?
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you for hosting this, and John as well. And I've joined a couple of the Zoom meetings recently, and they've been very helpful. You never know what your situation is until you hear from other dads and their situation, and their situations typically. You don't really know how good you have it until you hear other people's stories. And I think these Zoom meetings are great because it's difficult to get together physically a lot of times.
Okay. Eric, Brian, Dwayne, did you want to share a thought or have a question before we close up?
Yeah, this is Dwayne. Didn't really have any thoughts. I've got 4 kids. The youngest, we found out when she was about 6 months, or we did a genetic test and found out she had trisomy 9p. It's a mutation on the 9th chromosome. It's like a partial third arm of the 9th chromosome. And yeah, I was not at all prepared for how I was going to handle a child with special needs, and honestly, I don't think I've been handling it great. So I figured, maybe it's time to start looking outward and seeing what everybody else is experiencing. It's been a little challenging. I feel like I'm just kind of floating out in the sea with nobody else kind of going through this, especially with this type of condition or with any challenge you try to take on, you go and at least talk to somebody who is exactly going through what you're going through. But with her condition, I can't say like, oh, I'll just use Down syndrome, for example. There's a lot of great resources. There's a lot of, things like that. I can go speak directly with a parent about that, but with mine, and she's doing great. She's about 1.5 years now, and she's not speaking. Well, she says mom, and she's crawling, which is great. I think the other hard part too is that we have some neighbor friends where they're about a month apart in age, so it's tough having that like one-to-one. So like every day it's kind of a slap in the face of where we could be right now. So that part's just been a little challenging. So
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing, Dwayne. You're one of the younger dads as far as your child with special needs, the age of your child with special needs. And I'm hoping that just listening to some of the comments tonight, gives you some insights, and I'm hoping a little inspiration, because it's overwhelming. Being a parent is overwhelming, and raising a child with special needs, and I'm not speaking from experience. Let me be quick to remind everybody. But I've said for a better part of a decade, some of the best parenting that I've witnessed, that's moms and dads, is in the special needs community. And I think the testimonies that I've heard this evening just reinforce that. And in light of the fact that we're up to the time limit I'd like to just say thank you to each of our presenters for taking the time this evening out of their busy schedules to share their thoughts. So where to from here? I'll just say a few things. We have our bi-weekly calls. This was the first in the series. The next call is going to be on June 16th at 7 p.m. Central Time. The topic is estate and financial planning for families raising children with special needs, featuring Brian Rubin, who's been a quiet mouse in the corner in Brian's Bears Man Cave. Thank you for sharing that background with us. Brian's here in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, and then we also are going to have Rob Rubel from Colorado Springs, who's a financial planner. You can go to the 21stCenturyDads.org website and register. We also have a closed Facebook group. There's about 100 dads that have signed on, and there's more activity week to week there. So if you haven't already done so, please go to the closed Facebook group. It's the SFN Dad to Dad closed Facebook group. I made reference earlier to the podcasts. If you've not already done so, please subscribe so you'll get a reminder every time a new podcast is released. And please also share with family and friends so we can continue to grow our audience. That's one of the most effective ways that we've identified for increasing the number of men that are involved in the Special Fathers Network. And then the original vision for the Special Fathers Network was that we were going to match the seasoned dads with the 10 plus years of experience with a younger dad. And we have some of the younger dads on the line with us, with Dwayne, and Eric's got a relatively young daughter. And I know that Nathan, you have a relatively young daughter as well. So one of the most effective ways is not only to be considering being involved with a dad's meetup group, but to have a one-on-one relationship. And we're happy to make those connections. But it's like a lot of things in life. You can't force a mentor father, a seasoned father, on a younger dad, right? He's got to be in the right state of mind. And I'm hoping that with conversations like this and future conversations that we're planning, that we're making it easier for dads who are close to the beginning of their journey to engage, right? And take some of the mystery out of all this. And every one of these dads who's involved with the Special Fathers Network, has had a reasonable amount, if not decades and decades of experience. And if you can just get one idea, in the course of an hour that you might be able to implement on behalf of your child, on behalf of your family, that's time well spent. And I'm hoping that we can just continue to perpetuate that. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. It's volunteer-led and driven, and we really need the support of those that are in a position to offer their financial support by making a tax-deductible donation. So in closing, I'd like to offer my heartfelt thanks to our volunteer board, Tom Couch, who's our host tonight, who will also be editing and producing the video that I hope will be on YouTube shortly. And then for all of our presenters today, Tom, John, and Matt, in order of appearance, if you will. We simply could not have done this without you. And that's all we have prepared for today. Thanks again for participating. I hope to see you on future bi-weekly calls. And by all means, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or any of the others that are involved with the Special Fathers Network. Be well and stay safe.